one of the hot topics within the Yang Gang is whether the community should throw its support and energy behind the Biden campaign. And one of the arguments to not do so is that, oh, look, it's too sort of old generation people who don't, they're like the opposite of Andrew Yang. Like if you liked Andrew Yang, you wouldn't be like, and my second choice is Biden. Right? And so then there's another school of thought, which is like, hey, the president is so bad that Biden may not be, top of anybody's list or many people's list, but he's certainly way better than the alternative. And it would be a good transitional kind of bridge to the future leadership. What would you say to the folks who got all fired up about Andrew and now are still feeling like they're looking for a new camp to join?
Well, there's only two camps to get in, and one camp is burning the country down right now and has, we know what's going on. I mean, it's almost a waste of time for me to talk about it because I know this group knows exactly what's happening in the country and how dangerous it is, and the recent articles and reporting around, Russian bounties on American soldiers and not doing anything about it, not denying it, lying, I feel like the president, if his lips are moving, he's lying. And I think it's really dangerous for a lot of different reasons. And I would just say, politics is obviously, steps moving in the right direction. But wouldn't you want to vote for somebody who would appreciate what Andrew Yang is doing, understands what he's doing, maybe bring him into the administration to begin the changes that you all want and that I want, and other young, leaders who understand this stuff? To me, that would be a clear choice to be able to do that. And I will say, I know this most people don't know this, but the vice president was in the Additive Manufacturing Institute that we have in Youngstown, Ohio, America Makes. It was the Obama-Biden administration. Biden had his fingerprints all over that. He understands that, the technologies of the future, electric vehicles, batteries, charging stations, additive, AI. All of us in politics, we can't necessarily get into the weeds on all of this stuff, but we know a significant amount about the impact it can have, that China's, running circles around us on some of this stuff, and that we better get our act together. And the vice president knows that. He's going to surround himself with people who understand that, probably like Andrew. I'm not here to, I don't have any inside information, but versus the Trump administration, I mean, it's like, let's hit the reset button. Let's get Joe Biden in. Let's make these moves around, the new economy, closing the skills gap, which the vice president talks a lot about, investing into the latest and greatest technologies. And then, we can go from there. But right now, if we get another 4 years, we're going to be really behind the 8 ball.
Let me ask you this, Tim. A lot of our viewers are actually former Trump voters who were persuaded by Andrew to, sort of think a little differently. And many of them are gravitating back to the president. And the argument I've heard them make is that, oh, Tom, you're always so hard on Trump, but you're kind of in this orange man bad mode. Like you're believing the media's narrative. If he's not the way that he's being portrayed. And I'm curious, like, you're in DC, you are working on legislation that has probably some White House interactions, and you're closer to it than certainly many of us are. You're not only consuming mass media. I mean, is he as he seems, or do you think maybe people are too hard on the guy?
He's clueless. I mean, I will say that, we worked a lot with Secretary Mattis, and Mattis is someone I have an enormous amount of respect for and work closely with, and he put some really key people into some key positions into the Pentagon, especially around tech transfer and some different things. And And so there were a couple really good hires in that context, and I do work very closely with them. But now Mattis is gone, and you see what he's saying. You see what Rex Tillerson is saying. You see what these guys who are with him are saying, and I would just say, like the competition with China, in my estimation, is going to be one of the most critical things that will define our lifetime. And the president doesn't really understand that at all. And he doesn't understand that we're actually going to, the trade and issues, you need fairness. And I've supported some of that, but it's not get in a fight with China and try to use it as a political, issue. It's about how do we outcompete them. And he does not have an agenda around how do we outcompete them. And they are leapfrogging us on additive. They're leapfrogging us with with what's going on with Huawei. They're pumping a ton of money into artificial intelligence, and they've got this Make It in China 2025 initiative. They want to dominate the top 10 industries across the board in the world. They're starting to do that. This is obviously pre-corona. They dominated about 50 to 60% of the electric vehicle market. So my point is that the Biden administration, which I'll be working closely with, will have a plan on how to dominate that future. And I know you have a lot of libertarians too, and it's always a tricky thing. But I do believe that the sweet spot is there's got to be these public-private partnerships, and that we've got to close the digital divide. We've got to close the skills gap, and we've got to find the most creative, imaginative ways, including utilization of the free market and all of the power that it has to close that skills gap, to reinvest back into these communities, to get venture capital out of just the top 3 states of New York and California. I think in Boston, 80% goes to those 3 states. And so there's no public investment in Youngstown, Ohio, right? There's no private investment in Youngstown, Ohio. So we've got to reimagine how this works. And I get like the government does not have all the answers. I get that it's in many ways too big and too bureaucratic, but it has essential things that it has to do. So bringing the imagination, the concept of efficiencies, using the power of the free market as much as we possibly can, and then fill in the holes, I think is really going to be important. And I would just say, I don't think that the Trump administration has shown any understanding of all that. And I mean, it's just, to me, he's just been a big disappointment. And I recognize I'm probably one of the few people who can see the similarities between why a Yang voter would both be a Trump voter and gravitate to Yang, because you're talking about, Trump talked about transforming the system. He talked about draining the swamp and blowing things up, and then didn't. Andrew has a real agenda on how to do that. And I would say if you had to pick, I would say that a progressive Democratic president with a new generation of people around them, like me, like Andrew, is going to move a lot more in the direction that you would want than a second Trump administration.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Tim, and I almost am more worried about an untethered second term of Trump.
Oh my God.
He doesn't have to worry about re-election. Like, what will he do? Like Jared running around? Like, I don't know.
just gassing people for no reason, man. Who knows what'll happen?